The night was silent, cold, and full of snow. Thick white flakes fell from the dark sky, covering everything in a soft frozen blanket. Colburn, a quiet man who lived alone in a small wooden cabin deep in the forest, was used to silence. He had chosen this life after the war, far from people, far from noise, far from pain. But this night was different. As he placed another log into the fireplace and warmed his hands, he heard something strange. It was not the wind, not the trees creaking under snow. It was a sound he hadn't heard in years. A cry. Not a human cry, not a full one, but something soft, weak, like a whisper mixed with fear and pain. Colburn stood still, listening again. There it was, faint, like a baby's cry, but not fully human. Something about it made his skin crawl and his heart beat faster. He grabbed his coat, boots, and a flashlight, then stepped into the snowstorm. The cold wind hit him hard, but he didn't stop. The sound was coming from the north side near the frozen creek. He moved quickly, snow crunching under his feet, his eyes scanning the white darkness. Then he saw it, a small shape lying in the snow, nearly covered, barely moving. He rushed closer. And what he saw froze him in place. It was a girl, not more than 20. Her skin was pale blue, glowing slightly under the snow. Her hair was silver white, stuck to her face with ice. She was holding 2 tiny babies close to her chest, their bodies wrapped in torn silver fabric. The babies were crying, barely. Colburn didn't understand how they were still alive. The girl's lips were purple, her hands shaking, blood around her ribs, but her arms were wrapped tight around her newborns, as if her life's last breath belonged to them. Colburn knelt beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" he asked, his voice loud over the wind. The girl opened her eyes slowly, her pupils glowing green. Not from Earth, no doubt. She tried to speak, her voice cracked and weak. "Save them." Colburn didn't think, he just acted. He took off his coat, wrapped it around all 3, and lifted them in his strong arms. The weight was light, too light. She had lost a lot of blood, and the babies were ice cold. He hurried back to his cabin, his breath short, his heart racing. Every second mattered. Inside, he laid them near the fire, wrapped the babies in thermal blankets, and checked the mother's wounds. She had deep cuts on her side, and her breathing was shallow but alive. He worked fast, cleaning the blood, bandaging the wounds, placing warm packs near the babies. They had small faces, blue like their mother, but with soft pink fingers and wide, silent eyes that blinked up at him. One of them held his finger, tiny and trusting. Colburn felt something shift inside his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. Protectiveness. Hours passed. The fire burned warm and the snowstorm outside roared louder, but inside it was calm, safe. For now, just before sunrise, the girl opened her eyes again. She looked around, then at Colburn. Her lips trembled. "Where are we?" "You're safe," Colburn said softly. "You're in my cabin. I found you in the snow." She blinked slowly, then looked down at her daughters. Both sleeping quietly now, tears filled her eyes. She nodded. "Thank you." "What happened out there?" he asked, not pushing too hard. She coughed, her voice barely a whisper. "They left me, said I was weak, said the babies would bring death." Colburn frowned. "Who left you?" She looked into his eyes, pain and fear deep inside hers. "Krill soldiers, my own kind. I ran, I hid, but I couldn't go far. I just wanted them to live." She closed her eyes again, weak, still healing. Colburn sat beside the fire, watching her and the babies sleep, his mind full of questions. But one thing was clear. Someone had tried to kill them. Someone wanted these babies dead, and he had just made himself part of it. Outside, the wind howled louder, and in the far distance, unseen by Colburn, a small black drone flew past the trees, scanning the ground, following a heat trail. It paused near the frozen creek, then turned silently toward the cabin. The girl and her daughters were not just survivors. They were being hunted, and Colburn was now the only thing standing between them and death. The morning light pushed through the frost-covered windows, casting a golden glow over the small wooden cabin. But peace had no place here, not today. Colburn sat beside the sleeping alien girl and her newborn daughters, a rifle resting across his lap, not out of fear, but instinct. The kind of instinct that had kept him alive in too many battles. He had survived 2 Earth wars, a rebellion on Titan, and something terrible on Mars he never spoke of. But nothing had prepared him for this. He glanced at the babies sleeping quietly, wrapped in warm blankets, their small chests rising and falling gently, the silver threads in their hair catching the light. They were Strange but not scary, in fact. They looked peaceful, as if they had never seen danger. Though danger was all around them. The girl stirred, moaning softly, her skin still pale blue, but a little less cold now. Colburn moved closer. "You're safe," he said again. "You're in my cabin." She blinked at him, her voice still weak. "You are not afraid of me." Colburn shook his head slowly. "Seen worse," he replied, then added, "Name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Zira." He nodded. "Colburn?" Zira tried to sit up but winced in pain. Her side still bandaged. Colburn helped her gently, placing pillows behind her back. She looked at the babies with teary eyes. "They're still alive." "You kept them alive," he said. "Now it's my turn." She studied his face. Surprised by the kindness in his voice, humans were not known to be gentle. Not where she came from. Suddenly Colburn's motion sensors beeped softly. Just once, barely noticeable, but he heard it. He stood quickly, grabbed a scanner from the drawer, and walked toward the window, careful not to draw attention. He scanned the area outside, cold, white, empty, but not entirely. Something had passed near the edge of the trees. Not big, just a flicker of heat. He closed the curtain and returned to the table. "We might have company." Zira's face changed, fear in her eyes. "They followed me?" Colburn didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached under the floorboard and pulled out a hidden box. Inside were tools, parts, and something wrapped in cloth. A device. He placed it on the table and unwrapped it. Zira's eyes widened when she saw it. "Is that Krill tech?" "Piece of it," he said. "Took it from a crash site 5 years ago, still works sometimes." Zira reached for it, her fingers tracing the lines. Then she gasped. "This model has a memory chip slot." "Do you have a reader?" Colburn nodded and opened her torn suit. Careful and respectful, inside the fabric near her collarbone was a small cut. And just beneath it, he found a tiny blinking data chip. "You had this hidden?" he asked. Zira nodded. "They would have destroyed it if they found it." He inserted the chip into the device, and a small blue hologram flickered to life above the table, showing what looked like a genetic chart, alien symbols, and 2 pulsing orbs marked with strange symbols. "These are your daughters?" Colburn guessed. Zira nodded slowly. "They carry something inside them. Something ancient, something powerful. The Krill call it the ember of life." Colburn frowned. "Sounds poetic, or dangerous." "It's both," she said. "They're not just my children. They're the last carriers of an ancient DNA, one that can unlock old technology. Weaponry and energy never meant to be used again." Colburn stared at the hologram, then at the sleeping babies. "So they're not just hunted. They're wanted." Zira's voice shook. "The Krill Empire wants to use them, control them. If they can't, they'll destroy them." Outside, the snow had started to fall again, but not far from the cabin, hidden among the white trees, a black drone hovered, silent, scanning. "Recording." Back inside, Colburn turned off the device and removed the chip, hiding it under the floorboards. "We can't stay here," he said. "They'll find us. Even in this storm." Zira clutched her babies tighter. "Where can we go?" "There's an old mining outpost 2 valleys away," he said. "My friend Raina runs it now. She owes me more than a few favors." He grabbed a map, circled a location, and began preparing supplies. Food, fuel, heat packs, everything they'd need for a hard journey through snow and ice. As he packed, Zira watched him, unsure why a human, someone like him, would risk so much for her and her daughters. "You don't even know us," she whispered. Colburn paused, looked at her, then said, "I know what it's like to be left behind." That silence between them said more than words ever could. Suddenly the fire dimmed slightly, and every alarm in Colburn's cabin blinked once. Zira's body tensed. "They're near." Colburn picked up his rifle and muttered under his breath, "Time to show them what humans do when someone messes with their home." Snow kept falling outside like it wanted to bury the world. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. Colburn sat by the fire, gun across his lap, eyes sharp, ears tuned to every creak in the wood. Zira slept lightly with one arm around her twin daughters, both now breathing softly, but even in their sleep. One of them made a small clicking sound, not like a cry, but something strange. Colburn noticed it again. This was the second time. The sound was like a pulse, a rhythmic chirp, barely audible, coming from the child's chest. He placed his hand over the baby's heart and felt it. A soft vibration. Like a machine waiting to start. "What are you, little one?" he whispered, half in awe, half in fear. Suddenly, a faint blue light blinked on the cabin wall. Motion detected. 30 meters west. Colburn's breath froze. He stood slowly, turned off the lights, and walked to the window in complete silence, pulling back the curtain just an inch. Through the falling snow, barely visible, something floated. A drone, black, sleek, with red scanning eyes. Its movements too smooth, too quiet for Earth tech. It hovered outside the cabin for just 5 seconds, then turned away and vanished into the trees. But 5 seconds was enough. Colburn turned to Zira, already awake and holding her babies close, her eyes full of fear. "They found us," she whispered. He nodded. "We move at first light." But dawn was still hours away, and they didn't plan on waiting that long. Colburn triggered the defense grid around the cabin, basic, but it would buy them time. Then he went to the basement. Pulling out a long black case, inside was an old rifle. Not just any rifle, plasma modified. Illegal in 3 systems and still humming with life. Zira watched him prepare. "You were a soldier?" "Not anymore," he replied, loading energy cells. "Now I'm just a man who hates uninvited guests." He opened a hidden compartment under the floor, revealing a small tunnel carved years ago. It led to a snowmobile buried in a camo shed behind the cabin. Their escape route. Just then the air shifted. Colburn turned toward the door. A soft thump outside. Too late, without knocking, without sound. The cabin door was ripped open, snow blowing in like a wave, and with it stepped something tall, armored in black plates, its eyes glowing like hot coals. "A krill hunter!" Zira gasped, holding her daughters tight. Colburn didn't hesitate. He fired once. The plasma round hit the hunter square in the chest, sending it flying back into the snow, but 2 more appeared behind it. Colburn pushed a button on the wall. Defense turrets activated. A hidden cannon popped from the roof and fired rapidly, forcing the intruders to retreat, but only for a moment. The hunter hissed in a strange tongue, then aimed a blaster at the roof, destroying the turret in a single shot. Colburn grabbed Zira's hand. "Tunnel, now!" She crawled in with the babies, holding them tight, and Colburn followed, sealing the hatch behind him just as another explosion shook the cabin above. They crawled through the narrow space, cold wind licking at their faces until they reached the camo shed. Colburn uncovered the snowmobile, placed Zira and the babies in the back under heat blankets, and started the engine. It roared like a beast breaking its chains. The snowmobile burst forward into the night, bouncing over rough terrain, heading toward the valley. Behind them, the cabin burst into flames, a massive fireball lighting up the snow as the krill hunters stood watching. But Colburn didn't look back. Zira held her babies close, whispering something in a soft alien language, tears running down her cheeks. "I thought they wouldn't find me here," she said. "I thought Earth was safe," Colburn replied, his voice hard. "Earth is safe, until someone thinks it's not watching." As they raced through the darkness, one of the babies opened her glowing green eyes, and Colburn saw something in her gaze that didn't belong in a newborn: knowledge, or maybe memory. Suddenly, the snowmobile's tracker beeped. A drone was following them again. But this time, the baby made the soft clicking sound again, longer, louder, and the drone behind them exploded in mid-air without being touched. Zira and Colburn stared in shock. "What just happened?" he asked. Zira looked at her daughter, her voice shaking. "She's waking up. Her power is not just ancient. It's active." Colburn tightened his grip on the controls. Driving faster into the unknown, they had escaped the first attack. But the night was far from over, and the galaxy had just been warned. These babies were no longer prey. They were a signal, and humanity had just answered it. The wind roared as the snowmobile tore through the frozen valley, engine howling like a beast in pain. Colburn kept one hand on the throttle, and the other gripping the steering bar tightly. The path ahead was full of hidden ice cracks, but he didn't slow down, not with death chasing them through the trees. Behind him, Zira held her twin daughters close. Wrapping them in thick heat blankets, the babies were calm now, but not asleep, their tiny green eyes wide open, glowing softly in the dark. They weren't just watching, they were listening. Colburn looked back once just to make sure they were still there, and something strange caught his eye. One of the babies had her hand stretched out into the cold air, and the snowflakes around her weren't falling like normal. They were floating, circling her fingers in patterns. "What in the world?" he whispered. Zira saw it too and pulled the baby's hand back gently, whispering something in her alien tongue. "She doesn't know what she's doing," Zira said, her voice shaking. "But it's starting. The code is waking up. Colburn didn't understand yet, but he knew this wasn't normal. What code? He asked. Zyra hesitated, then leaned closer to speak over the engine noise. You've heard of Krill technology. Weapons, engines, machines older than any race remembers, but none of it works anymore. It's locked. Dead. Until someone with the right bloodline appears. Colburn narrowed his eyes. You're telling me your daughters can unlock ancient weapons? No, Zyra said. I'm telling you. They are the key. She pulled a small silver disc from her pocket about the size of a coin. This is an old translator, she explained. We call it a whisper core. It records sound, data, and life signatures. She held it near one baby, and the disc began to glow. Not just glow, but sing a faint, harmonic sound that seemed to echo in Colburn's chest. It only sings for bloodlines with active code, she said. They carry the Ember sequence, something the Krill thought they destroyed centuries ago. Colburn let that settle in his mind. And now they want it back, or wiped out. Zyra nodded. They left me to die in the snow when they found out I was pregnant with twins. They feared the old blood might return. They were right as the sun began to rise. Colburn reached the edge of the valley where the outpost stood hidden among the rocks. He parked the snowmobile and quickly moved Zyra and the babies inside a concrete shelter, carved into the mountain. They were greeted by Reyna, a tall woman in her 40s, tough and scarred, wearing old Earth Force gear. She narrowed her eyes when she saw Colburn carrying 2 alien babies. Trouble again? She asked dryly. The kind you can't imagine, he replied. I need your lab now. Inside, Reyna's tech team ran scans on the babies. Using both human and alien equipment, the readings confused them. Energy levels far beyond newborn norms, heartbeats syncing with nearby machines. Their presence even caused lights to flicker without contact. This is impossible, said one of the techs. These infants, they're like living batteries, transmitting and receiving at the same time. Zyra watched silently, worry in her eyes. The longer they stay awake, the louder they become. Colburn leaned over one of the monitors and noticed something. Lines of code forming on the screen, not in English or any human language, but symbols repeating in a rhythm like a message. What is that? He asked. Reyna looked at the data and shook her head. That's not ours. They're broadcasting. Broadcasting what? He asked. A location, Reyna said, voice suddenly serious. Or worse, a summon. Suddenly one of the monitors went black, then flashed red. Incoming transmission intercepted. A voice came through the speakers. Mechanical and cold, surrender the twins, or face orbital cleansing, you have 1 Earth hour. Reyna's face turned pale. They've got a satellite lock on this valley. Colburn clenched his jaw. So much for hiding. Zyra stepped forward, her body weak but her voice strong. There is a way to stop the signal. The Ember code can be reset if we activate the ancient satellite buried beneath Earth's ice belt. It's dormant, but it was made by the first humans who fought beside my people. Colburn's eyes widened. The old beacon? That's a legend. No, she said, it's real. And it still listens to one voice, human blood. He looked down at the twins, now both glowing softly, tiny hands clenching and unclenching as if they could feel the storm coming. Reyna leaned on the table. You'll have to get to the ice belt and reboot the satellite before the Krill fleet enters orbit. Or this place becomes a crater. Colburn didn't blink. Then we better move. The babies stirred as if they understood what was said. Zyra looked at them with tears in her eyes. They're not just the key to ancient tech. They're the key to stopping another war. Colburn picked up his rifle, checked the map, and looked at the sky. Then let's make sure they grow up in a galaxy worth saving. The sky above the mountains had turned from silver to steel, thick clouds rolling in like a warning, the kind only veterans like Colburn understood. A storm wasn't coming, it was already here. Winds howled across the frozen landscape, throwing snow like sharp knives, and visibility dropped to near zero. It was the kind of cold that made machines slow and bones ache, the kind of cold that killed but they couldn't wait. Inside the outpost, Colburn, Zyra, and her twin daughters stood ready beside an old snowhopper, a military-grade sled fitted with boosters and shields. Built for speed across deadly ice plains, it hadn't flown in years. But Reyna's team had just finished repairs, barely in time. They'll be here in less than an hour, Reyna warned, handing Colburn a small device. This will trigger the beacon reboot. If the satellite still listens, this'll make it sing again. Colburn took it and nodded. And if it doesn't? Reyna gave a dry smile. Then sing a good goodbye. Zyra sat in the hopper with her babies secured in warm capsules next to her, their eyes glowing faintly, both unusually quiet, like they could sense what was coming. Colburn fired up the engines and the whole craft shuddered, lights flickering as the boosters fought the freezing air. "Hold on," he muttered, and slammed the throttle forward. The snowhopper launched off the platform and sped into the storm, blasting across a sea of white where sky and ground looked the same. Only the digital compass kept them on track. Visibility 6 meters, temperature 54 Celsius. Hostile detection, active, inside the cockpit. Zyra looked out the side window and saw black specks in the sky behind them. Drones, fast-moving and shaped like wasps, swarming low. "They're gaining on us," she said. "They know where we're going." Colburn glanced at the radar. "Let 'em follow. We've got a surprise waiting." The surprise was buried under the ice. The forgotten satellite built after Earth's first war with alien forces. A communication relic wired to deep planetary defense systems, long thought dead, but Zyra believed it still had a heartbeat. Suddenly, a loud bang shook the hopper. The craft tilted hard as one of the drones fired a low-yield plasma bolt, burning a hole through the rear shield panel. Colburn growled, "Hang on," and flipped a red switch. The hopper dropped sharply, diving down into a narrow glacier tunnel. Using the canyon walls as cover, the move was reckless, but it saved their lives. The drones overshot, crashing into ice. Zyra held on to her daughters tightly, shielding their heads with her arms. "They're scared," she whispered. "I can feel it," but then something happened. One of the twins reached out again, her tiny fingers glowing green. And just for a moment, the snow around the hopper parted. Like a curtain of light and wind pushed it away. Colburn stared through the windshield, stunned. Did she just clear the storm? "She's not just the key," Zyra said, tears in her voice. "She's the door." As they neared the beacon site, an old signal tower jutted out of the ice like a broken tooth. Bent, frozen, almost forgotten. Colburn landed the hopper hard, sliding across the ice. Jumping out with the reboot device in hand. "You stay here," he said to Zyra. "If I don't come back—" "Don't finish that sentence," she said, gripping his hand. "We all come back. Or none of us do." Colburn ran through the ice and wind, reaching the base of the old tower. The entrance hatch was frozen shut, but he pried it open with brute force, his hands bleeding, steam rising from his breath as he moved deeper into the frozen structure. Inside, cables hung like vines, consoles blinked with ancient lights, and dust filled the air. He found the main control port, wiped away frost, and inserted the device. The screen blinked, a user unrecognized, awaiting authorization. Colburn slammed his palm on the reader. "Come on. I'm human enough, aren't I?" Nothing happened, seconds ticked by. Then, a small hand pressed beside his. He turned. Shocked, one of the twins was standing there, carried by Zyra, her green eyes staring directly at the screen. The console blinked again, then beeped. Genetic match confirmed. Sequence accepted. Suddenly, lights filled the room as systems roared to life. The tower began humming, a deep pulse spreading across the ice like thunder, and in the sky above, satellites long thought dead awoke. A massive blue light shot into the sky, piercing through the storm clouds. Earth's ancient beacon had been lit. Across the orbit, krill ships paused, alarms screaming in their command decks. Unknown planetary code detected. Earth signal. Level 0 threat. Board strike. Back at the tower, Colburn fell to his knees, laughing with exhaustion. "I can't believe it worked." Zyra hugged her child close, whispering, "You did it, little one. You saved us all." But just as they stepped outside, the radar in Colburn's pocket beeped again. Not enemy ships this time. Incoming friendlies, high speed, Earth signature. F-55 human fighters, swarming through the sky, diving toward the ice plains. Earth had heard the signal and answered with fire. The sky above the ice belt was no longer empty. Where once only clouds and cold winds ruled, now dozens of Earth fighter jets streaked across the horizon, leaving silver trails that cut through the storm. Their engines roared like lions waking from a deep sleep. Colburn watched from the top of the old beacon tower, his coat whipping in the wind, rifle strapped to his back. The Earth Defense Fleet had answered the signal, louder and faster than he ever expected. Zyra stood beside him, holding her daughters close, both twins wide-eyed as the sky filled with light and noise. One of the Earth jets flew so low it buzzed the ice ridge, its pilot tipping the wings as if saying, "We see you. We've got your back." But not everything in the sky was friendly. Behind the Earth fighters, black shapes emerged. Krill warships. Sleek, curved, and deadly, they glided like predators, and in their center floated the Oblivion-class cruiser, a ship known only in whispers, the kind that erases cities with one breath. Colburn, Reyna's voice crackled through the comms. They're still coming. The signal slowed them down but didn't stop them. They're sending a ground unit, heavy, fast. How long do we have? Colburn asked. 15 minutes, if that, she said. I'm sending a dropship to pick you up, but you'll need to hold the line. Colburn looked at Zira, then at the twins, both babies glowing brighter than ever, their energy starting to warm the frozen ground beneath their feet. They know their enemies are close, Zira whispered. But they are not afraid, Colburn nodded. Then neither are we. He turned and began laying traps, thermal grenades under the snow, sonic mines rigged near the only entry path, and a portable energy shield powered by the last core in his belt. Zira followed him, watching his movements. You've done this before, she said. Too many times, he replied without emotion. But this time, it means something. Zira placed her hand on his arm, soft and firm. You don't have to die for us, Colburn looked at her, eyes steady. I'm not dying for you. I'm living for something better. Then came the sound, deep, mechanical, like drums made of metal and thunder. Out of the snowy mist, krill walkers appeared, six-legged beasts with blasters mounted on their backs, followed by armored soldiers with glowing red visors, marching in perfect sync. One of them held a large scanner pulsing toward the twins' energy. They're close, Colburn said, raising his rifle. Let's give them a proper welcome. The first blast came from Colburn's shoulder cannon. It hit the lead walker. Throwing it back in flames, the others opened fire, red bolts of energy slicing through the air. Zira shielded the twins behind the beacon core, whispering a prayer in her alien tongue. Colburn moved like a storm, ducking behind cover, firing with perfect aim. Each shot pushing the krill back, but there were too many. One soldier broke through the defense line. Racing straight toward the beacon, he raised his blaster, and then stopped. Frozen in mid-air, shaking violently, the baby on the right had lifted her hand again, and the air around the soldier shimmered. His weapon shattered, his armor cracked, and he collapsed to the ice, unconscious but alive. Zira stared in disbelief. She protected you, Colburn exhaled slowly. That little one just saved my life. But the krill weren't done. They fired a missile toward the beacon, locked on the baby's energy. Colburn saw it and didn't think twice. He ran forward, jumped in front of the missile as it flew, and triggered the energy shield strapped to his chest. The blast hit him directly. Snow exploded, light flashed, and everything went silent. Zira screamed his name, ran through the smoke, expecting to find a broken body. But Colburn stood there, coughing, the shield on his chest glowing bright red, almost dead but still holding. You're insane, she cried. He smiled through the pain. Yeah, but it worked. Above them, the Earth dropship broke through the clouds, descending fast, machine guns roaring, cutting down the remaining Krill soldiers with expert precision. Reyna's voice came through again. Get in now! Colburn helped Zira and the babies into the ship, then jumped in last as the bay doors closed behind them. As they lifted off, the sky behind them turned orange. The beacon tower self-destructed, erasing all trace of the twins' signal, making sure no one else could track them again. Colburn collapsed onto the cold floor of the ship, breathing hard, bruised, burned but alive. Zira knelt beside him, her daughters curling quietly into his chest, their small fingers wrapping around his hand. For the first time, Colburn didn't pull away. He held them gently, eyes closed. They were safe, for now, and he had become something he never expected. Not a soldier, not a savior, but a shield. A human shield between death and hope. 3 days later, Earth's sky looked different. For the first time in decades, satellites from every nation began to speak to one another again, not in war, but in unity. Messages zipped across space faster than ever before, encrypted, urgent, and glowing with one single symbol that hadn't been seen in over 100 years. The Ember sequence activated in a secure human medical base hidden beneath the old Martian watchtower on Earth's northern ice cap. Zira sat beside a soft metal crib, watching her daughters sleep peacefully for the first time since their birth. No more sirens, no more drones, no more fear. Colburn stood across the room, wrapped in healing wraps. Ribs fractured, shoulder burned but alive, thanks to the baby girls who had placed their small glowing hands on his chest each night, healing his wounds without fully understanding how. Reyna entered with a soft smile, holding a data pad. You should see what just came in, she said, handing it to Colburn. The screen lit up with a broadcast. The United Planetary Council had just made an announcement. To the citizens of the known galaxy, 2 newborn lives have reminded us that we are not just protectors of Earth, but guardians of hope. The twins rescued from the Krill threat have been placed under unified human sanctuary, protected by every fleet, every law, and every sky. Any threat to them is a threat to us all. Colburn lowered the pad slowly, his eyes heavy but heart calm. Zira watched him, her voice soft. They don't understand what they carry yet, but someday they will. He nodded. And they'll know they're not alone. Just then, the older of the twins blinked awake, tiny fingers reaching out toward Colburn as if she could sense something in his chest. Something broken, something trying to heal. He walked over, knelt beside the crib, and let her grab his hand again. She smiled, a small sound escaping her lips, not quite a word, not quite a cry, just, "Peace. You think they'll remember all this?" he asked. Zira smiled. Not the fear, but maybe the warmth. Moments later, a group of Earth's highest commanders arrived at the base, not with weapons but with medals. They wanted to honor Colburn. He refused them quietly. "I didn't do it for medals," he said. "I did it because no child should be hunted in the snow." One young officer asked him, "But why help an alien? Why risk your life for someone not even human?" Colburn turned, looked down at the twins, and said calmly, "Because they were more human in their first breath than some people are in a lifetime." That answer traveled far, beyond Earth, beyond the colonies, across every human-alien broadcast hub, and even into Krill space where a single order was issued. Stand down. The Ember Line has reawakened, and Earth has claimed it. Zira and her daughters were given full sanctuary, and Colburn was offered a place of leadership in the Ember program, a new alliance to protect ancient bloodlines and prevent war. He declined the title, but he stayed close. Days passed into weeks. The snow melted slowly outside the base, and on one peaceful morning, one of the twins, just beginning to walk, stood up, walked toward Colburn, and placed a small metallic object in his hand. It was the whisper core, still glowing faintly. He looked at her, confused. "What's this?" Zira stepped forward, her voice steady. "She's asking you to hold it. She wants you to be part of the memory." Colburn stared at the device for a long time. Then he sat down, the baby climbed into his lap, and Zira sat beside him. Together they pressed their hands to the whisper core. It glowed brighter than ever before and began to record. Not war, not pain, but the story of a man who heard a cry in the snow, who found 2 tiny beings wrapped in frost and fear, and who chose to be a shield when no one else would. The story would become legend, told in every human ship, every alien school that dared to ask, "What does it mean to be human?" And the answer would always be the same. It means we don't run from the cry, we run toward it.